evening. Thank you for turning out. There's a lot to do here on the playa, so coming to listen to somebody talk is taking a lot of chances. I got involved with dark skies back in the 80s. I was performing in Las Vegas and in LA, and in between the two places, there is a vast expanse of desert. Some friends of mine took me out to see Halley's Comet in 1986. We had to drive 3 hours to get away from the sky glow of Los Angeles. And when I got out there and I saw the expanse of what was in the sky, the thought that came to mind was, my God, this goes by unnoticed every single night because people's lights are on. That started me on a journey, which is still continuing. Because my belief is that if we can no longer see the heavens that we belong to, how long does it take before we forget that we belong to the heavens? This becomes a cosmic disconnect for us. We are part of all that we see out there and all of what we can't even see out there. And we're beginning to see even more and more with the James Webb Telescope. So what ended up happening was I left my career, I left society, I moved to the jungles of Hawaii, I built a tree house, and I lived in it for 5 years with no electricity, and became very attuned to the movement of the moon, the stars, and daylight. Now, humanity had been exposed to nothing more than firelight, sunlight, starlight, moonlight, the occasional lightning flash for millions of years. So it makes sense that our ocular nerve has evolved to interpret that frequency of light. It's only been 137 years where we are now being exposed to electrical light, and we still do not fully understand the implications of that. I'm a member of the International Dark Sky Association, a dark sky delegate, and an ambassador for the International Astronomical Union, and a dark sky ambassador for them. I've had the opportunity to speak to tourism boards, the Department of Land and Natural Resources in Hawaii, elected officials, Dark Sky Symposium in Europe, the Pakistani Self-Sustainable Institute, and in a few weeks speaking at a conference in Sydney on communicating astronomy to the public. So we all kind of wonder, what did we do over our COVID? I wrote this book, Astrotourism. And the reason I wrote this book is because I believe through the monetization of a dark sky, people will protect it. We are driven by our purses, not the higher angels of ourselves. Now, that may not necessarily be the case for Gen X, Y, and Z, because they too have a higher calling, as us baby boomers once did when we were young people, because they see that there's something more at stake than simply getting ahead in the world. Because right now, planetary survival is a part of this. And how we use light and how we interface with light has something to do with climate change, has something to do with our carbon footprint. Now, bringing awareness to that is a very steep curve, because most people live under a dome of light their entire lives, and they don't know anything other than that. So I want to just read a couple of pages here that kind of exemplifies, this is out of the book, exactly what I mean by that. The foundations of civilization are grounded in the night sky, as the stars have been stitched into the human race's history. There was no place on the planet where people did not commune with the darkness of night and watch a cavalcade of stars sweep over the earth in an endless procession. Today, we are witnessing the disappearing view of the night sky in the course of one human lifetime, after it has been with us for hundreds of thousands of human lifetimes. Here's a nursery rhyme that you may know 4 lines of. People are mostly oblivious to something they do not know exists while knowing it exists. We know intellectually that the stars are in the sky, while at the same time not seeing and experiencing the stars in the sky. It's a cognitive dissonance that is under the surface. Most people are born and live under a dome of light, Yet we learn this as one of our very first songs. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. We thought that there was all there was to it. The rest of the poem was forgotten because it has lost its meaning to modern civilization. We have literally become adrift from our ties to the cosmos because it has ceased to be a part of our daily lives. We have forgotten what an indispensable part the stars were to our very existence. The rest of the poem illustrates. When the blazing sun is gone, when he nothing shines upon, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle all the night. Then the traveler in the dark thanks you for your tiny spark. He could not see which way to go if you did not twinkle so. In the dark blue sky you keep, and often through my curtains peep, for you never shut your eye till the sun is in the sky. 'Tis your bright and tiny spark that lights the traveler in the dark. Though I know not what you are, twinkle, twinkle, little star. Anybody want to guess? Anybody want to guess when that was written? 1806. Excuse me. In 1806, people actually relied on the stars for their very survival, because without those stars, they couldn't find their way home. Today, over 1 billion people on the planet can't see the Milky Way anymore. 99% of the world's population lives under some form of light pollution. Now, for some folks, they may just think, oh, this is just simply an aesthetic. We can live without seeing the stars. Yet for the course of humanity, the stars told us when to plant, when to harvest, when the fish would run, when the animals would migrate, when it was time to shear the sheep, when it was time to gather eggs. We absolutely, positively needed it for us to live. Now that we don't have that, we have to ask ourselves the question, what information are we no longer getting that used to come to us via starlight? Excuse me. There's a certain irony thinking that light that has traveled literally millions of light years to reach our eyes is being shouted out right at the finish line a few feet above our head because of streetlights. It's a tremendous irony. What has happened in the last few decades is we are now seeing the Earth at night through satellite photography. Raise your hand if you've seen a picture at night, the Earth at night, right? You can see the outlines of the countries, outlines of Florida, whatever. Those pictures have demonstrated all of the energy that is being wasted, because if that camera can take a picture of that light, that means that light is going straight up in the air. That's light that's wasted. It's not hitting its target. 30% of all residential outdoor lighting is wasted. Over 15 million tons of CO2 is created from that wasted light. Changing our relationship with light can change the trajectory of climate change. I used to create the show, Luma, that was all done in the dark to bring awareness of light pollution. Now my mission is to bring the awareness to how much pollution is being created by light. An example, a physicist from Florida Atlantic University, Eric Vandernoot, did an experiment with a 70-watt incandescent bulb. And he found that in 1 second that bulb is burning, in 1 second, that same amount of energy could lift 15 pounds, 1 meter off the ground. How do I know this to be true? I was at an Earth fair and they had a bicycle and you could get on it and pedal, and you can make either the LED panel light up or the incandescent bulb. So you flip the switch and you're making the LED panel come on, and you're just kind of cruising, no problem. You flip it to the incandescent bulb, you have to pedal like a son of a bitch to get the thing to barely glimmer. So now you take that same calculation, 15 pounds every second, 1 meter off the ground. You leave that incandescent bulb on all night, you're able to lift something to the effect of 270,000 pounds, which is the weight of a fully loaded 747. Trying to wrap your mind around the amount of energy that's wasted there just to make light. We have, since the 19th century, been destroying our planet to make light. Another example of our lust for light. Fire has been an illuminating source for us for most of humanity's history. And the wick remained the constant technological use of making light. And the oil lamp was probably the first mass-produced object to make light, or the first mass-produced object in the history of the world. That existed for about 70,000 years until 1747. A guy named Aimé Argan invented the argon lamp. And the argon lamp was a circular wick. You've probably seen those in hurricane lamps. This circular wick made a light that was 6 to 10 times brighter. 6 to 10 times brighter than a single wick. And boy, humans flocked to that thing like June bugs around a porch light in the summertime. But that bigger wick needed more fuel. And the fuel came from whales. And at the 19th century, during its heyday, there was over 10,000 whaling ships scouring the planet looking for whales, killing them, boiling them down to make oil, to make light. Had it not been for the invention of kerosene, we would have hunted whales to extinction to make light. Today, we're basically driving ourselves to extinction with all of this light that we're making. Mind you, it is not the only source of pollution. But how many people are willing to lift a finger to turn off the switch? When I started doing research about this, I realized that humans have a tremendous superstitious fear about the dark. Now, it's funny because as children, we're afraid of the dark. But then when we grow up and become adults, we learn that some of the best times we're ever going to have in our lives are when the lights are out. When we were still cave people sitting around that fire, if we left the light of the fire and walked away from it and out into the darkness, we might not come back. So yeah, it made sense. Light good, dark bad. Once the church got a hold of that, then they really went with that. So darkness became even more and more evil. So the irony again here is, even though life is born in darkness, and the light is where we go to when we die, we fear the former and crave the latter. And being born is a struggle. You have to struggle to be born. It's easy to die. You just simply have to let go. But I digress. So the fire became finally electricity. The fire that we were using to create illumination. And Edison's invention came online in about 1882, Pearl Street Power Station. In the first year, there was 400 lamps being illuminated. In 2 years, there were 10,000 lamps being illuminated. And that number's continued to grow ever since. It's never gone backwards. And that's what's so frightening about all of this. We thought, oh boy, LEDs, when they come online, it's going to save all of this energy because they use less energy. No, it just simply created more light because we're not using that energy saving. We're just making more light. Now, when I first developed Luma back in '89, And in the early 90s, people kept saying, oh, you need to go see Burning Man. You need to see, I said, I'm too busy. I'm trying to get this show created. All we had was a red and green LED. That was it. I made electric hula hoops using the strip lighting that you see on airplanes for emergency and a little 9-volt battery connected to a circle of kite sparring. And that was the electric hula hoop. Nowadays, you're looking at stuff that's being driven by computer chips. So the reason I bring that up is technology advances in lighting faster than any other science out there. It's constantly leapfrogging. As you can see, every time you come out here, there's more and more technology being invented around lighting. Mostly it's in the software. The blue LED was invented in '96, and with blue, red, and green, you now have the 3 primary colors, which can be mixed. And when you mix those, you get white, and that white light can be split up into a million different colors. And the reason I bring up white light is because that is truly what is most disturbing to the environment right now. And it's not really white light. It's blue, rich white light. Now, are you all familiar with the headlights, the new white headlights that you see on the road? Yes? How many find it glaring? Raise your hand. Everybody, young, old. The reason it's blinding is because it is literally blinding. And what do I mean by that? In 2016, the AMA put out public guidances saying that lighting should not be anything over 3,000 Kelvin. Kelvin is a measurement of color temperature. Fire burns at about, perfect. That is burning at about 16 to 1700 Kelvin, right there. Okay? The white lights that you see on those new headlights are burning at 6,000 Kelvin, twice the recommended dose that the AMA suggests. In 2019, the French version of OSHA did a 400-page report showing that that high-intensity blue-rich white light is actually causing permanent retinal damage because it's destroying retinal cells. That's why it's impossible to look into one of those lights. It's like looking at the sun. You want to block it out. Your eye constricts. It's trying to protect the retina. So for those of you who are finding that difficult, get a pair of yellow driving glasses. You can get them at Walmart or any store. They're less than 20 bucks. It'll make all the difference in the world because it's blocking out the blue wavelength. The blue wavelength is this very short wavelength. It's the shortest. And it is the most damaging. It's the one that causes the most glare in snow or fog. It is the wavelength that is most disturbing to night pollinators, migratory birds, marine animals. And human health has now been linked to things such as diabetes, obesity, melatonin suppression, anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, all from this blue wavelength. You might have heard it being spoken about, don't look at your screens after a certain period of, before going to bed. Because what's going on is your melatonin isn't allowed to kick in, which is what it does once the sun goes down. And that's the thing that helps you sleep. So, that being said, let me go back to some of my notes here. Oh, so this I wanted to mention this little device here. We all use these. Do you know who invented it? It's a match. I'm holding up a match here. A match. Any idea who invented it? So this is funny. This is something this is used the world over, and yet nobody knows who invented it. This is a modern-day Promethean device. Fire from our fingertips. Originally, they were called lucifers. And there's a song from World War I, which predates all of you folks, about, pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. If you got a Lucifer to light your fag, smile, boy, that's the style. So, Lucifer, the guy who invented this, James Walker. James Walker invented the match. And this was a game changer because now all of a sudden we had the ability to make light without having to carry a coal from one hearth to another, or rubbing two sticks together, or using flint and steel to make a spark. So that's a fun little piece of trivia about light. Pardon me, I really do need to. James Walker invented that in the 19th century. Yeah. So, okay, so one of the things when I lecture or present to elected officials or county councils, and I can say here proudly, with pride, when I gave a talk to the the city council of the city of South Lake Tahoe, they changed their policies and now they're working to become a dark sky community. And usually, without fail, the one thing that people bring up is, we have to have our lights on so we're safe. Well, back to the superstitious fear around darkness. There are absolutely no studies that have been done anywhere that's shown that light, darkness equates with crime. There have been studies that shown that lighting can actually increase crime. They lit some alleyways in the Chicago metro area, and they found that there was more car break-ins because the light was shining into the windows of the car, and someone could just go by and scope out and go, oh, look at that, okay. And so what I say to people is, if light truly prevented crime, we wouldn't have any crime during the day. But that's not the case. We have crime during the day. And once people get over the superstitious fear about darkness, they realize, okay, we can turn the lights down to provide all of the different benefits that come with dark sky initiatives. One of them being it reduces energy because you're not using as much. It reduces the cost because you're not using as much energy. It reduces carbon emissions because you're cutting down on how much energy it takes to make the light. It improves safety. Most people don't give their eyes the opportunity to adjust to the darkness. When you have a super bright light, it creates a very intense shadow, which provides a place for the unsavories to hide in. And you're blinded by the light because your eye is stopping down and not allowing itself to adjust to the darkness in front of you. It not only it protects nocturnal wildlife. Migratory birds are probably the biggest animal population that's being infected by our light pollution. And there's a number of cities around the country that are turning off their lights during migratory season. Even as place as red as Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, they're turning off their lights on these big buildings during migratory period. The 9/11 memorial, the two big pillars of light that go up, they turn those off every 2 hours for 20 minutes to let the birds disperse, because they have counted as many as 15,000 birds circling around these lights being disoriented from it. They need the stars to navigate. So that's an example of how dark sky initiatives protect the bird population. It also protects night pollinators. We need this. Mexico was the very first country in the world to make light an environmental pollutant. Stop and think about that for a second. Light is an environmental pollutant, so that means it's right up there with anything else that you would dump out into the glyphosates or any kind of chemical. Because what they're seeing is there's so many birds coming from the north that spend their migratory winters in Mexico, and there's a tremendous amount of bats, and they rely on those for pollinating. They realize, wow, we're really kind of fucking ourselves up by putting all this light out there because we're not getting the benefits of the birds, the bats, and all of the moths and everything else that's doing the pollinating at night. So dark sky initiatives really also preserve cultural heritage. And this is one of the things that really spoke to the people in Hawaii, because I live on the Big Island, and it's the last remaining dark skies in Hawaii. You don't see the Milky Way on Oahu anymore. You don't see it on Maui anymore. You can still see it on the Big Island. But where I live on the Kalapana coast, for the first time in 30 years, you can see sky glow on the horizon from a new shopping mall they put in. So it creeps. Light pollution creeps. It doesn't happen right away. I hear plenty of stories of people saying, oh, our new neighbors moved in and they leave that fucking light on all night. Why don't you turn that off? Because they're oblivious. It's not shining into their window. It's shining into yours. That's light trespass. We never really think about light trespass. But when a light leaves your yard, that's light trespass. If you keep your dog in your yard, you should keep your light in your yard. So if you want to know if your light is polluting, step outside, go out onto the street. If you're seeing a cast light onto the pavement, you're light polluting, even if it's coming from inside the house. So, are there any questions? Are there any questions before I continue? Okay, I've answered all your questions. Awesome. Yeah, sure. What?
If you look out there, one thing that you have to consider in terms of understanding how we will abate light pollution, it's not just the fear, but the joy. I mean, we do extract a lot of joy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. And so you're absolutely right. And we forget the power that the darkness has in that. We love our holiday lights, but we have to wait before it gets dark before we turn them on. We love fireworks, but we have to wait till it gets dark before we shoot them off. And when we bring a candle-laden birthday cake into the room, what do? We turn off the lights so we can see in the darkness the glow of the light. And we blow out the candles, and in the darkness is where the wish comes alive. Again, the birth in darkness. This is a celebration. This is a temporary. It's not an ongoing. And a lot of the light out there, you see very little white light. If you look out this window here, or this frame, the only white lights are the three there that are in front of you. The rest of them are pretty much colored. Off in the distance, you see, okay, there's a white light going by on that bicycle. There's a pair of headlights off in the distance that are white lights. But most of the lighting out here is colored light, and it's not the same thing. But again, the light is only going to be joyous if you have the darkness to put it into, right? Because without that, and so then, you go to a place like Las Vegas, and they're thinking, oh, more light's going to get attention. No, as a matter of fact, it's just simply adding more and more to the same thing. It'd be wonderful if a place actually decided to have a sign that was totally black. And then people really wonder, like, well, what's that about? So back to this whole thing about by creating, this is called our link to the stars here. And the ancients tracked the nearest star with such dedication that even scientists in modern times are left astounded by their accuracy. Using nothing that resembled the sophisticated tools we have today, the oldest known calendar is dated to 8000 BCE. The original calendars were lunar in nature and based on the moon phases, not the sun's movement. Though the Gregorian calendar is used by most countries globally, a large segment of the world's population still adheres to a lunar calendar to indicate their holidays and New Year's. Even some Western holidays are based on celestial events. In 325 CE, the Council of Nicaea established that Easter would be held on the first Sunday after the first full moon, occurring on or after the vernal equinox. Now that sounds complicated. One of the most important holidays celebrated in Christianity compels the celebrant to track not one, but two astronomical events. So after the vernal equinox, the first Sunday after the first full moon. So no wonder people never know when Easter's like, when is it this year? When is it Easter? It keeps changing around. Though billions of people of all faiths do not necessarily travel to see a full moon, they're watching the sky and the movements of our closest celestial bodies to determine when it's time to celebrate. The ancients had to track the sun, moon, and stars to know when to plant and harvest. They knew that a week before or after a full moon was the time to travel and waited until then to take their trips to markets because it was bright enough to travel at night. Humans' connections to the night sky and all of its stars is inescapable, and millions are traveling to recapture the enchantment, awe, and reverence that stargazing brings. The stars overhead connect us with the rest of what is out there and with eternity itself. As starlight began its journey years and years ago and traveled millions and trillions of miles to reach us. It takes the sun's light 8 minutes to reach Earth, so we do not see the sun as it is, but 8 minutes earlier. We're looking back in time, and we do that any night you can see the stars. Astrotourists have a sense of belonging to the universe and not just to the world. They seek the quiet and solitude that comes from being in a pristine location. They return to their lives with a renewed vitality as the weight of everyday life were lifted from their shoulders, if only for a night or two. One of the most famous paintings in the world is Van Gogh's Starry Night. So, another way to put a value on a dark sky. If you were to find a piece of land, and it was just let's say it was $15,000 an acre for a piece of land. And that's what it was. And then you discovered water on it. Well, the price of that land has just gone up in value. Probably double or triple. Might be worth $45,000 an acre now. If someone discovered zinc on that land, well, now the price will probably shoot up to maybe $75,000. If somebody found gold, now it's probably worth $3 million an acre. If somebody found diamonds, now it's $300 million an acre. Natural resources change the value of something. People are literally living under a diamond mine when they're living under a dark sky. It becomes something that generates a revenue for being nothing. If you don't build it, they will come. More and more people are traveling throughout the world to experiencing the last remaining dark skies on the planet. The International Dark Sky Association started designating dark sky places in 2008. There are now 190 dark sky parks, reserves, sanctuaries throughout the world, and there's another 200 on the pipeline because more and more communities are starting to see by protecting this, people will come. It's a sustainable form of tourism. It's a way to protect a natural resource, and it's a way for them to provide a means in which cultural heritage can be preserved. I mentioned Hawaii before, and when I brought this up to the chair of the county council, I said, you know, by really advocating for dark skies here and protecting them, the stories that the Hawaiians told about the night sky remain intact. And that was the thing that fired her neuron, because for her and for the people of Hawaii, they want to preserve their cultural heritage. And our stories are told of the night sky are different. Y'all are familiar with the W in the sky, Cassiopeia. For them, that's the frigate bird. The little dipper that circles the North Star. For them, that's the Alahini bird circling the nest. The hook, that is the tail of Scorpio. Scorpions are found all over the planet. And in most cultures, the Scorpio constellation is consistent, but not in Hawaii because they didn't have scorpions. So it's the hook, Maui's hook. The trick was he got his brothers out there to row a canoe and he threw a hook into the water and they're facing forward. And he hooked the bottom of the ocean floor. And he says, "Oh, we got a big one. You got to keep rowing." And his brothers are pulling and pulling. "No, keep pulling." And that's how the Polynesian islands were pulled out of the bottom of the ocean depths, was from Maui's hook. So there's a lot of creation myths that are tied into the night sky. In South America and in the southern parts of below the southern hemisphere, they don't look at the stars as much as they look at the dark spaces between the stars. So they see dark constellations. In South America, there's a toad and there's a snake in these dark constellations. And when the snake is seen on the horizon starting to come up, when the skies turn dark, it means the snakes are waking up from hibernation and they're coming out of the ground. And now they'll be active until such time as the season turns. And now you'll start to see the snake go back into the earth when the stars are coming out. And that's when they're going back to hibernate. So we have the expression, as above, so below. So much of what we are as humans are tied to what's out there. And a lot of us are looking for our salvation out there. We hope, come on, aliens, come and show us how it's done. And we all know on a higher level that they're waiting for us just to simply to get our shit together, which is part of what this journey is about. Most people come into this conversation in the dark, and we fear the dark until such time we realize, without the dark, there really isn't any light to appreciate. This is what we need. So there's a thing called Allen, and Allen is artificial light at night. And this is the studies that are being done are revealing more and more the damage that Allen is causing our biosphere. Yeah, I don't want to get into reading to you. With the invention of electricity and the light bulb, we finally had the opportunity to advance civilization with the creation of light bulb jokes. You know how many mystery writers it takes to change a light bulb? 2. One to change it, the other to give it a surprising twist at the end. But then the question really comes up is, how many light bulbs is it going to take before we change? When are we going to start being active in changing the way we light the night? So there's 5 principles and takeaways that I hope you can go away with. One of them is the light necessary that you're going to have on? Is it necessary? You see umpteen amount of Home Depot lighting, solar things, lighting the path. That can be done with illuminated tape. Even white paint allows you to see where you're walking without having to create more light. Another one is to shield your light. Put a shade on it. And by shading the light, it's hitting the target you want and not spilling out into a place where you don't want, like your neighbor's window. Using the least amount of energy necessary. Using a low color temperature, a warm color temperature, 2000 Kelvin or below. Putting it on a timer or a motion sensor. And those principles pretty much will help you be aware of that and how you want to light your night and being able to speak to your neighbors about it. I've been living out of this place on the Big Island, and in the last couple of years, a guy from Houston, Texas bought the house across the street. No intention to live there. It's just a investment for him. And he has all of these lights on all night long. And I've tried to have the conversation with him. Could you please turn off these lights? They're shining into my house. He's from Houston. People from Houston haven't seen the stars in 75 years. He doesn't care. Doesn't matter to him. He doesn't live in the environment. So this is the conversation that you have to confront your neighbor if they have the light on, asking them if they can do something different than what they're doing. And most of the time, if you make people aware that if they want to be part of the solution versus part of the problem, they'll do one of the 5 things that I spoke about. You can go to darksky.org, darksky.org, which is the International Dark Skies website, and you can get lots of information there on how you can take steps necessarily to protect the night. So, are there any questions? Yes, please.
You sort of danced around moon, but you didn't really address moonlight. Is it possible that cities could have smart streetlights when there's a full moon, the streetlights dim to be like augmentatious to the full moon, or the streetlights are what a full moon would be like? Yeah. Okay.
So the had to do with the moonlight. First, moon actually burns at 4,000 Kelvin, but it's so far away it doesn't have the same effect. As far as smart lighting, the new 7-pin connectors on a lot of when they install new lighting allows for the lights to be dimmed. You can dim some cities are dimming their lights by 50% after hours and saving 75% on their energy bill by dimming it 50%. And the human eye doesn't even recognize that it's been turned down. So you can even turn it down more. We're that sensitive to it. Now, as far as actually changing the sensors, this is one of the things that I'm bringing up. The chapter in the book is about eclipse chasers, and there's a huge one coming in 2024. And after war and after famine, nothing drives more people to migrate temporarily than a solar eclipse. Right? I mean, think about that. I mean, that is like astounding. And so you can have this eclipse going up through the center of North America. And it's going to pass through a lot of big cities. And so what I've been bringing up on the podcast and people who interview me going, unless they do something to their circuitry, when the sun goes to totality, all the lights will come on and people will miss that one brief moment to be able to see the stars. And that is one of the truly remarkable things about a total solar eclipse. When I saw the first one, all of a sudden the stars come out all at once. Boom! Yeah, what happened? Because we're used to seeing them slowly, one at a time, over the course of a couple of hours before you finally see all of them. And now you're seeing all of them like somebody pulled a shade down. No wonder the ancients thought the world was coming to an end. This is like, and then they all come back again as soon as the moon passes in front of the sun. And so the big realization for me was like, they're there during the day. They're still there. They're there during the day. I just can't see them during the day. So that really kind of tweaks with your head. So yeah, these things are possible for cities to change their lighting. And again, the big pushback, it's always safety. Oh, we need it for safety. And yet there have been plenty of this, was a town in the UK that basically turned off a lot of its light, and they didn't find any increase in automobile accidents and no increase in crime. It just didn't happen. Yes, question. Yeah. My name's Marlin. Marlin. Yeah. Yes, the City of Lights.
Makes it illegal to leave lights on commercial shops, shopping centres after closing time. Now, the law isn't respected permanently, but there's a group of activists who go around town at night turning the lights off because there's normally an emergency light outside. Do you think this is a sort of solution that could work for the US as well?
Yes. There's a lot more people in Europe and countries that are being a lot more proactive about this. Croatia has some of the most advanced lighting ordinances. Anything outside has to be below 2,700. Anything. So, and China and Shanghai, they turn off the lights at night. So, yes, turning off the lights at night, it's not rocket science. And there really isn't any argument to leave them on. We are raised with, well, when you leave the bathroom, you turn the water off, you don't leave it running. How is that any different than leaving the light on? Leaving a light on with nobody using it is no different than leaving your oven on with no food in it. There just isn't any difference. And yet we leave it on for convenience. More motion sensors will be coming online. So then when you walk into the room, the light comes on. And it's for stupid people who don't know how to turn it off. It'll turn itself off. You know, fortunately, our cars will do the same thing. Are there any other questions? Yes, question.
Thanks to you personally, where I live, this guy actually had a lot to do with our own dark sky ordinance. And I live in a neighborhood where when I ride into it on my bike, it's like riding into a dark hole, and that's okay. From my second story, I look out towards an elementary school. They changed their lighting to be in compliance with dark sky, and I can see an absolute cut in lighting. And it goes down where it needs to be, and there is nothing up above. And I can walk out of my front door, my back door, anywhere around my property, living right in the middle of town, and I can see the Milky Way. Thanks to him.
You're welcome. Thank you. Are there any other questions?